Today's episode is brought to you by my newest resource for women's health professionals, The Practitioner's Guide to Optimizing Egg Quality. This comprehensive guide breaks down the 5 key steps to improving egg quality, along with the top 5 evidence-based supplements to support egg development, mitochondrial health, and implantation potential. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/egg-quality to grab your complimentary copy today. That's fertilityfriday.com/egg-quality. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 587. Today's episode is a really great follow-up to last week's episode where we took a deep dive into how to reduce our toxin exposure with Laura Adler. That episode really made some waves. And of course, whenever we get into this topic of toxins and toxin exposure, it can feel overwhelming. And in Real Food for Fertility, we have a really in-depth chapter on toxins and how they affect fertility. And even just wading through that research and looking through all the different places where toxins are coming at us can be a little bit overwhelming. So in today's episode, we're focusing on skincare. And my guest, Courtney Joy Goetz, is joining us. She is from Primarily Pure. And we get into a lot of interesting topics. I mean, your skin is your largest organ. And what I always say is that if you're putting it on your skin, you also should be able and willing and wanting to eat it, because essentially when we put products on our skin, they're being absorbed into our bodies, similar to, it's obviously not exactly the same as eating it, but it has very similar effects. So a couple really interesting topics come up in today's episode, from greenwashing, this whole issue within the natural industry, where different companies are putting green labels and putting all these cool marketing buzzwords on their products when they haven't actually removed the toxins from said product. Or maybe they'll add in something that seems very healthy, but they didn't take out like the fragrance or the paraben or whatever. So we talk a little bit about that, and also just the importance of natural skincare and how it can be different to our typical ideas and thoughts around skincare. So there's a whole different approach to creating natural skincare products at times when you're not able to rely on a lot of those chemical compounds that kind of hold everything together. So really excited to share today's episode. Let me just share a little bit about Courtney before we jump into it. Courtney Joy Goetz is Primarily Pure's holistic esthetician and education lead. She has been with the brand for over 8 years and has been involved in the beauty industry for over 15 years. Her experience and expertise with natural skincare, the healing power of touch, and holistic beauty rituals are at the core of all that she creates. She is trained extensively with industry experts across the country in buccal, intraoral sculpting massage, manual lymphatic drainage, facial gua sha, and cupping to offer her community the most educational content and transformative treatments. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode with Courtney. So I'm so excited to be here today with you, Courtney. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lisa. It's such a privilege to be here with you.
Yes, of course. And the last time we saw each other was in person, which was so fun when I was on the Primarily Pure. Well, tell me I know that there's the name of the company and the name of the podcast. So tell me the specific name of the podcast so the listeners can go check that out.
Our podcast is called the Grounded Wellness Podcast. So obviously we're a skincare company, but everything impacts skin health. And so we really love to focus on overall health and wellness. And so your expertise just resonates so much with our community. So it was so cool to have that conversation with you over in Southern California.
Oh, it was so fun. And I still remember so we were having this conversation. So on the air, it's these two women having the conversation, but a lot of your team were men. And it was so fun, the questions that they were sharing. Yes. And I always find that men are, obviously impacted because men have women in their lives, but it was so fun to just have that experience of all the men being like, wait a minute, what did you say about this? And what was going on about that? And I had no idea about this.
Yes. They helped to guide the conversation. We're like, that's a good question. Let's talk about it.
Oh, it's so fun. Well, so I would love to hear about your story for anyone who isn't as familiar with you or as familiar with Primarily Pure. I'd love to hear, how did you get into the skincare business?
Yes. So I have been a licensed esthetician since 2007 and really was drawn to this industry since I was a little girl. I started a little spa and skincare studio in my parents' basement and would charge the neighbor girls for makeovers and spa days. So I feel like it was innate within me and just really drawn to beauty and wanting to be beautiful as a little girl. And then through the years, just devouring beauty magazines and all the DIY beauty books. So then finally, when I had the opportunity to go to beauty school, it was truly a dream come true. And I will say, now that I am fully embracing the holistic lifestyle, it didn't begin that way. So I'm really grateful for my aesthetics education. It actually really inspired a whole person perspective when it came to skincare. My mom tried to raise us with more of a health focus in our family, but there was still so much more to learn and to dive into. And so my roots of my training really began with not isolating the skin or just simply focusing on topical products, but really looking at whole body health for balanced, glowing skin. And then I was working with this international beauty brand after graduating for several years, only to then start to wake up a little bit more to the reality of natural products and the presence of greenwashing in these natural products. And so starting to learn that maybe these ingredient lists were not as clean as they claimed to be. And as I was diving deeper into what truly supports skin function and what promotes the balanced skin barrier, I realized that these ingredients really didn't have a place in my skincare protocol for myself or for my facial guests. And personally, I really struggled with problematic skin, tons of acne over the years, and truly tried every approach, from pills to tanning beds to all the cringe approaches now. And so I think too, just my own personal healing journey of what truly clears skin, starting to cut gluten and sugar and alcohol from my diet, and really seeing profound shifts in skin clarity when I adopted those changes in my lifestyle. So then encouraging my facial guests to also look at their lifestyle, look at their diet, and to reconsider the products they were applying. So then I ended up leaving that beauty brand I was with for a really long time when I discovered Primally Pure, because I was on the search for truly clean ingredients, minimal ingredients in the products, and knowing Bethany McDaniel as the founder, and that she was this female entrepreneur pursuing really incredible sourcing and formulations. I thankfully was able to connect with her, and that was in 2016. So I've been with the brand for over 8 years and have been able to work alongside the brand. I was probably the fourth employee hired, and now we have almost 125 or so employees. So it's been a really cool experience to be a part of the brand growth and just helping to also support the growth of the product line and the ingredients we source, and education, especially with natural ingredients or products, can work a little bit differently than conventional skincare can. So really helping to lead the educational side of the brand. And as I mentioned before, especially with our podcast, it's just another branch of our education that we love to share with our community. It's not just about the products you apply to your skin for healing, but about all these other internal and external factors. So that's kind of my journey from the beginning until today. We also had the privilege of starting a holistic spa through the brand, which we had open for about 6 years, which we just recently closed, sadly, with a move of our headquarters, and I moved states. And so while I'm not practicing in the Primally Pure Spa, still really engaged in skincare tips, holistic skin habits, rituals, and also educating on the podcast alongside Bethany.
Amazing. That is so fun to hear your journey through this. And I feel like it's so common, given that this is such a big part of your life and what you do, that you did have a very personal connection to it, having struggled with not so great skin. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Before we started the interview, we had a little chat. We were kind of talking about different topics to touch on. And you had mentioned, what about any questions from your audience? And the one question that did come to mind was, what about women who really struggle with acne and poor skin? Mm-hmm. What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I love that question. And oh, my heart just breaks. So I think the first thing I want to say is that I believe everything is repairable. I believe balance is possible, and our skin is so brilliant and intricately created that when given the right support, it does have these innate healing capabilities. But when we're experiencing this painful, somewhat embarrassing or shameful skin conditions, like you can be so embarrassed to actually leave the house. It can be so painful. It can be hard to sleep. And as women, we want to feel beautiful. And so experiencing these inflammatory skin conditions can really take a toll on self-confidence. And so healing too, what I think I wish I knew early on when I was starting my skin healing journey is to, instead of viewing breakouts or redness or rashes as something to combat or fight or to erase or get rid of, is to actually approach it with more of a compassionate perspective. Because our skin is our largest organ, it truly is a mirror to our internal world. Oftentimes, these signs that our skin is showing us can be a cry for help. There are these imbalances within my body that need some tender loving care. It needs some support. It needs some fortifying, some detoxifying. And when we start to see these conditions as an invitation to do deeper holistic healing, the ripple effect is not only clear, balanced, healthy skin, but it's more energy, it's more vitality, it's better sleep. There's just more clarity and connection and confidence holistically. So that's my encouragement, is to, instead of isolating the skin or trying to target these conditions with just harsh topicals, to really start to look deeper at like gut health, hormonal balance, lymphatic drainage, these big health functions and the way our body was created to thrive, and to start to just slowly do some deeper investigation to support your skin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so much I can dig into there. I think that one thing that was really interesting to hear you talk about the skin is it's similar to the way that I talk about menstrual cycle, right?
Yes.
Because it's a reflection of what's going on a deeper scale. And obviously the skin is a little bit different because then, I mean, when I was growing up, I grew up in the age of this, all the infomercials and stuff. And so you would see all of those commercials, and the solution to skin problems was stuff that you put on your skin. So why don't you talk a little bit about just that concept? Obviously, what we put on our skin is very important, but when it comes to skincare, it's not everything. One of the things that you said, which was really interesting, was that everything is skincare. This is something you said before we started recording. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear how we balance that with the importance of what we put on our skin, but also how that's not the whole story for ensuring that we have healthy skin.
Yeah, definitely. Everything is skincare. As we look again at it being our largest organ, and it's intricately connected to the way we've been created, everything influences the other. And obviously our skin is impacted by internal factors and then our external surroundings and world. So topical products, as you mentioned, are very important. The quality of the topical products we're using especially, but it is only one piece of the skincare puzzle. And so one thing that I think is very important for skin health that I think is often overlooked is actually nervous system regulation. Oftentimes we hear that the sun is the number one culprit for premature aging. I actually disagree with that. I think light in moderate mindful doses is extremely healing for the skin. Obviously, we don't want extended UV exposure, but I believe that stress is actually the number one culprit for aging. We are living in such a state of chronic stress in our modern society, and our body not only, like, even I feel like I have friends are like, oh, I'm not stressed, I don't feel stressed, but stress can come in so many different forms. The toxic burden from the products in our home, on our bodies, emotional stress when we're dealing with unprocessed emotions or trauma. That's just like kind of low grade chronic stress, especially in our fast paced modern world, the hustle, rarely having times of stillness or deep rest. So when we really look at the effects that stress can have on our body and living in this prolonged sympathetic state, It degrades our health over time, and repair and regeneration of our skin, our body, our functions, our organs can only heal in a state of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest. And so one of my favorite tips to support balanced skin is parasympathetic nervous system activation. And so different vagus nerve exercises. So vagus nerve is one of the biggest components of the parasympathetic nervous system. And that helps to regulate so much within our bodies: cognitive function, digestion, hormones, mood, and simple practices, truly just deep diaphragmatic breathing. Just taking a few moments sporadically throughout the day to tune back into our breath, which often too we can find we're like breathing pretty short, pretty superficial, and it's a fully free, accessible anytime. And so even just like that oxygen getting back into our bodies, supporting our skin health from the inside out, lowering those stress levels. And doing an inhale that's about 4 seconds, holding, and then exhaling about 8. So that extended exhale really helps to engage the vagus nerve. And then other simple practices like mindfulness and meditation, vocal cord vibration. There's these various really simple practices to really engage your nervous system that support whole body and skin healing.
Did you know that you could listen to The Fifth Vital Sign for free with your 30-day trial of Audible? Head over to fertilityfriday.com/audible to listen now. That's fertilityfriday.com/audible. That is so interesting because, of course, that is not typically what we are told when we think about improving our skin. And maybe share a little bit about how you made that connection. Like, was it just through your work, through your education, right? I think that we underestimate the role of stress in all areas. So yes. I'm right there with you. I think that, and I really like how you framed it, because I often try to do the same thing when talking about the cycle, where there's different kinds of stress. Like the chronic stress isn't like the guy that cut you off today. The chronic stress could be the fact that you have stuff off-gassing in your house constantly that's putting an extra burden on your liver that you don't even know about. And so so I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think one of the things that led me to this understanding truly was like, I tried everything else. Like there's so many facets and factors that I feel like often the nervous system can be a missing link. And especially if you feel like you've tried every topical or lifestyle change, I think often stress can still be lingering and we're living in this dysregulated state. And I think too, when we look at the skin, especially when it comes to premature aging or acne, often the root cause of these conditions is inflammation. And I think too, our stress can have such a detrimental effect. The mind-skin connection is so real. And that's also what can create this inflammatory cascade. And I think it's cool too, because honestly, in modern medicine, they're beginning to acknowledge the link between emotional stress and disease. And something like 80, this fact may not be correct, but there's a very high percentage of diseases and disorders that they can trace back to emotional stress. And I think that's the big piece that I'm leaning more into is stress, as we mentioned, the products, the go lifestyle, and more so, I think, really leaning into that emotional piece. And that is something that can easily get looked over because we can't see it. It's not something that's easily recognized. We really need to create those spaces of stillness and solitude and meditation, I think, to allow those emotions to really surface, be processed and released. And when we think about the lines and where they're forming, like often women are struggling with the 11s or those forehead lines of just like overthinking, worrying, fear, anger. And so often our emotions are revealed on our faces, whether we try to hide them or not. And like embarrassment, shame can be that flushed look, redness. So our skin is telling a story too of the emotions happening within us. And that's why nonverbal communication is also so powerful. We communicate not only with our words, but our facial expressions and what our skin is communicating. So I feel like I've kind of rabbit trailed a bit in this response, but there's just so many layers. And I think too, in my own healing journey, just kind of feeling a little bit stuck. I was working with an endocrinologist trying to help balance my hormones. I was doing all the diet changes, the balancing the blood sugar. I detoxed everything and still struggling with certain skin conditions. And that's when I was like, there's got to be a deeper link. And that's when I really dove into the emotions and started to learn the effect that that can have on our skin and our body's overall ability to heal.
Mm-hmm. So that was really the final piece of the puzzle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk a little bit about skincare. I think that we forget that, especially like I find in my mind as we talk about skincare, because of course I'm not always talking about skin, but in my mind, I feel like I go between my face and the rest of my body. So it's like when you're talking about these things we can do to protect our skin, I'm thinking about women who suffer with acne on their face because that's our face. So that's kind of like the most distressing, I would imagine, the most distressing aspect of it. But you don't really think about everything else. You don't think about lotions and soaps and shaving gels and perfumes and all the things, because as you said, our skin is our largest organ. And whatever you put on your skin, you may as well eat because it's the same thing. Maybe talk a little bit about that aspect of it and why it's so important for us to be aware and intentional about what we put on our skin.
Yes. There is, I think, a statistic from the Environmental Working Group that said women apply, which I honestly think this is a little bit of an outdated statistic. Women apply up to 12 products a day with over 168 ingredients. Like if we really think about our body products, our shower products, our makeup, our skincare, our hair, our fragrance, that is easily more than 12 products a day. And when we add up all of these different ingredients, that may not always be clean or supportive to our health and our hormones. Over time, it contributes to this toxic burden on the body, which makes it harder for our liver to be optimal and our digestion to work effectively. And so while our bodies are very resilient and on the one-off can protect itself from these invaders in a sense, when we're applying these products daily, which most of these products are, that's where it can degrade and damage our health over time. And so I think when it comes to skin, because it is an organ, I like to think of it as healthcare. So by really focusing on the products you're applying and the ingredients you're using, it helps to heal your skin and give it that environment to really thrive. And oftentimes these ingredients that are in modern day conventional skincare products that you grab from a drugstore or department store, honestly, even a lot of e-commerce brands now that are claiming to be natural are still packed with a lot of ingredients that are known endocrine disruptors. So they mimic our own estrogen and they throw off this delicate balance and disrupt this hormonal harmony that we need for so many functions in the body. Obviously, fertility being a big one. And also they have been linked to being carcinogens and allergens. And there's just so many ingredients that are being allowed in these products because there's also practically zero regulation. There is a lot of movement towards creating more regulation around products, but in America, there's really minimal regulation on what clean is, natural, non-toxic. So that's the other issue is a lot of brands are catching on to consumers desiring cleaner products, learning about the harmful health effects of applying these dangerous ingredients daily. And so, unfortunately, greenwashing has also become more prevalent. So on the front of a bottle, it may have like a green leaf, or it may say natural, or made with, or made without. But when you turn the bottle around and actually read the ingredient list, there can still be some sneaky chemicals that we don't want to be applying every day. The number one ingredient that I always recommend to keep an eye out for that can still find its way even into natural formulas is the ingredient fragrance. And this can be a hard one because it's like, oh, I can pronounce it. I understand what this word is. Where some of the others are like either acronyms or long words that you can't pronounce, where fragrance is like, oh, that can't be that bad. And I want to smell good. And however, this word is actually protected by the FDA for companies to use because it's a trade secret, this fragrance formula, but it can contain hundreds to thousands of chemical ingredients to make up this one fragrance. So in reality, we have no idea what this ingredient actually entails. And it's truly in everything: the body washes, the shampoos, the air fresheners, the candles. So that, I feel like if we just start with fragrance and remove that from the products we're applying, we're surrounding ourselves with, it's a really powerful foundation to start to heal.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That was kind of, if you hadn't said it, I would have asked about it, because when you talked about the greenwashing, I think that that's just, it's irritating, but I think we should all know, if you didn't know already, you should know that it's happening. Because I mean, I've had that happen a couple of times, or maybe my husband goes to the store and he buys something and he's like, is this, like I bought this natural? And then it's like, he's pretty good. So I'm not trying to say negative about him. He's pretty good, but it has happened. And I'm super irritated every time it does. You buy that lotion from the health food store or whatever. And then as soon as you open it, you're like, oh man, because when it does have fragrance, that it has that. So maybe share with us then, obviously the fragrance thing is huge. And what's interesting for me, I've been avoiding typical products for a very long time now. And my husband makes lotion from different ingredients. Yeah.
Love that.
I've been trying to get him to take it to the next level, but he does this whipped body butter stuff that's pretty fun.
Okay.
So that has helped me to stay out of a lot of the products in the marketplace. Although I still it's not, how do I say it? I still like to support brands. I still you know what I mean? I still like to have a variety. The point that I was making though, is that with the fragrance, that's one of the things that we can avoid. But how do we know then? Maybe share with us some tips for choosing brands, because you said a couple of things in the interview. You mentioned that you switched brands. And one of the things that you said was because you really felt strongly about the ingredients, right? In Primarily Pure. And that was something where it sounded like you were saying, even though they were trying, they still didn't go far enough. I really wanted to make sure that there was the alignment there with the products. So talk a little bit about that. Maybe share even a little bit from the industry perspective of what are some of the challenges associated with making a brand that truly is clean in the actual, not their greenwash definition, but the actual definition of clean, whether it's financial, whether it's the product stability, right? Why are all these brands pretending to be clean and not?
That is the question. Well, I think they're pretending to be clean because of this growing consumer demand. People are becoming much more educated on ingredients and skin health. And I think too, sadly, with the rise of infertility, so many women are starting to make this change when they're struggling with conception. And so I think brands are trying to kind of quickly align their packaging claims and marketing campaigns and what they think consumers want to hear without actually doing the hard work of aligning their ingredient list, or doing it just enough that it can look natural, but then they have this inclusion of the fragrance or refined inflammatory seed oils or non-organically grown ingredients, which contain pesticides and herbicides. And so I think that's one, money is always behind it. And the other is, which we talk about a lot at Primarily Pure as well, natural products, they do require a different type of formulation. We don't have the chemical stabilizers or the emulsifiers or these typical skincare ingredients that are made in a lab to support the texture or the aroma or the color of a product formulation. And so sometimes we often mention that with natural products, there is some variety in the color you receive or what the texture feels like. There's not this uniformity or perfection when it comes to nature. That's not how nature acts or behaves in a sense. yeah, it really just depends on the crop that season or the weather, like especially with where we source. And that's why too, sometimes sourcing can be really tough. Looking for these suppliers and distributors that are really aligned with regenerative farming practices or truly don't spray their plants, or what processing are they using for their oils and not using chemicals or high heat. So there's a lot that goes into truly clean formulations. And then I think sometimes when people have used conventional skincare for majority of their lives, they're used to a certain feel or texture or experience with a product, and natural products can sometimes work a little bit differently. They're not sacrificing results. They still perform so beautifully. And if not, sometimes I think even better, because they're really supporting skin barrier function, your skin's microbiome balance. But like a cleanser, for example, we're used to probably splashing your skin with water, sudsing up, rinsing it with water, where we really advocate and love cleansing oils. And it doesn't work the same way. You actually massage the oil onto dry skin. Then you use a warm washcloth to actually remove the product and makeup and dirt and debris. So that's why too, we have a strong emphasis on education, just because sometimes natural products can work a little bit differently. Natural deodorant being another one. Aluminum-based deodorants block your sweat glands. If you watch people apply deodorant, it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, like just constant application. Where with natural deodorant, there's no fillers, there's no cheap ingredients. Everything's very pure, very concentrated. So for example, you only need like 1 to 2 swipes of a natural deodorant, and there's no aluminum. So there's no ingredients to block this natural function that's necessary to detoxify the body and bring that back into balance. And so a lot of education on why sweating is good for you. And once you make the switch, your body actually becomes more balanced over time and minimizes the amount of sweat, minimizes the odor. And so, yeah, I think when we're used to experiencing products in a certain way, sometimes making the shift can be a little bit more challenging.
Oh, there's so much to dig into.
Yes.
So I want to share a thing. So I learned about the aluminum problem a long time ago, and I'm one of those people who still can't get away with not having deodorant. I don't know if I'm a stinky person. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, guys, but it is what it is. And so, but the reason it really resonated with me, what you were saying, because in high school I used Degree. Probably the worst. All the chemicals, all this, like, right? Don't judge me. I was a teenager. But then when I stopped using it, I've tried so many different natural deodorants. Now I'm really excited. I want to try Primarily Pure's deodorant. But anyways, we'll get to that later. But I've tried so many different deodorants. But the first thing you notice when you stop using the Degrees, sorry to label drop, but that's literally what I used to use. The first thing that you notice is that you do sweat. So this has been years now. I'm like 20 years in, so I'm used to sweating. But at first, yeah, it's a little weird because you don't even know that this is happening, especially if you started using deodorants like that when you were a teenager. Like you don't even realize that it's blocking your sweat. I just want to hang out there because I'm fascinated by this because I just do this in my own silo. I've never really talked about that. And I had a friend say something to me recently, Courtney, she said something like, oh, but I hate those natural deodorants because then you sweat. And I was like, wait a minute, you're supposed to sweat. And that's like, but I don't talk about this very much. So that's why. So let's hang out here because this is super fascinating to me.
Yes. Yes. And isn't it interesting too, when we're which I still forget because this has been my world now for so long as well. I'm like, oh, people are still drawn to the aluminum or just, they don't have that awareness. And I get it. I mean, sweating can be uncomfortable, and especially in the summertime, it's like, oh my gosh, that's like the last thing I want to do.
I feel like I should say something like, what we are talking about, just for clarity, for anyone who still like doesn't sweat or whatever because of the aluminum, we're saying like you're sweating, like it's wet, but you're not smelling. Just in case anyone's curious about that part.
Yes, that's exactly it. So the deodorant, I mean, that's the difference first and foremost between a deodorant. It's helping to combat that body odor, and it's neutralizing that unwanted smell, where the antiperspirants are what contain those aluminum compounds to truly block the sweat glands. And it's like a little bit scary when you kind of dig into the research surrounding that as well. Aluminum has been shown, it's also linked to Alzheimer's disease. And even thinking of like heavy metal toxicity in the body, aluminum is a heavy metal. And we're applying it near these really profound lymph nodes right here, which is the main detoxification hub for the body, and then our delicate breast tissues. And I think oftentimes alongside aluminum in those more antiperspirant deodorant products are parabens. And there were also studies that found parabens in breast tissue tumors that they pulled. And so, especially with the deodorant, it's super vital to use an aluminum-free, truly natural deodorant. And also, too, the way our body's intended to function. I mean, I think saunas are having a moment nowadays too for the detoxification benefits. We're sweating. Like, sweating is known to be so beneficial for our health, and we're doing it from a whole body perspective in saunas and working out and exercising. And so it kind of defeats the purpose if we're doing these other health practices, but we're still using aluminum deodorant to like block our sweat glands. So yeah, I think when you dig a little bit deeper into the impact it has on the body, hopefully it just sparks a little bit of inspiration to try a different approach to your deodorant.
Popping into today's episode with a quick question. Do you like paper charting? Today's episode is brought to you by the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Workbook. This is the first beautifully designed, fully customizable paper charting workbook designed with you in mind. With 3 years worth of charting pages, the Fertility Awareness Mastery Charting Workbook has you covered. If you've been looking for a solid alternative to charting apps, you'll love this charting workbook. The FAM Charting Workbook is available in both Fahrenheit and Celsius editions and is available in spiral-bound, paperback, and ebook versions. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/workbook to order your copy today. That's fertilityfriday.com/workbook. Now let's go ahead and jump back into today's episode. I'm so curious now. So I feel like I've been living under a rock because I've just been doing this for a long time. So I don't have any idea. I don't have a touch point of what's normal now and what percentage of listeners would be using regular deodorants with aluminum and not sweating and not realizing this is a problem. So this is I'm going to be following up on this somehow. I'm going to do some sort of, maybe I'll do an Instagram poll. I want to know. I want to know because I'm curious now. Because like I said, like when you were talking about it, it's one of those things that has slipped into the background of my mind because I kind of made that decision so long ago and didn't think about it. It is terrifying to think of all the people out there that are not sweating. Because it is, like you said, an essential just part of detoxification and right next to our breasts, which is a huge thing.
So deodorant was actually the first product our founder, Bethany, ever formulated. It is literally what started the brand.
Wow.
Yes. So that's what we're known for, I will say. And so the majority of our customers, it can be extremely challenging to find a natural deodorant that really performs. Sweating aside, like you can still be really stinky. It can feel really uncomfortable. It can cause irritation or rashes on your delicate underarm skin. So people have really struggled to find one that really works and supports their skin. And so many of our customer reviews are, I literally was about to turn back to my drugstore deodorant until I discovered Primal and Pure's deodorant. And so that's like our big piece of education is like, if you're going to start swapping out your skincare for more natural alternatives, deodorant is the first product to swap.
Well, at some point in the future, when I do try, I'll provide my honest opinion because I am that girl. I have tried so many different, I don't want to make this about me, but we're talking. I've tried so many different, and full disclosure, what I have to use, I use deodorants that contain baking soda. And so occasionally I have to take a break from them because if you use them for like long stretches of time, sometimes they obviously cause irritation in the underarms, but that's the only thing that has worked. Because like I said, I'm apparently a sticky person.
Lisa, I'm going to send you some of our deodorants. And fun fact about our formula, because that is often, and people can have reactions to the baking soda in the formula, which is the ingredient that helps to combat unwanted odor. We use a naturally mined baking soda, which means it contains a finer grain. So it's much more smoother in the application, less prone to developing any sensitivity or redness or rashes. And a little sneak peek, we are launching a baking soda-free deodorant later this year. for those of our community that truly cannot use any kind of baking soda, we are working on a baking soda free version.
That is so interesting. I just want to say, like, this was legit just my curiosity. I had no idea that that was your first product. Just in case someone thinks this was like a really highly calculated advertisement. Like, it really wasn't. This is legit. Like, and I want to share something else too. I'm not going to brand dropped or whatever, but I recently tried a different brand to the one I usually use, and it did not contain baking soda, but I was having one of those irritation moments and I was like, okay, let me try something else. And then I used it. And at first I thought it was a miracle. I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then probably a month in, I started to get, and at first, I just want to say I don't have particularly sensitive skin. I'm not that girl. I actually can use baking soda containing deodorants for the most part. And usually after, it takes a while before I get irritated. So I just want to preface that. I'm not super sensitive. But after about a month, I started to have this ridiculous, I don't know what it was. It didn't have baking soda. So it had some sort of natural, whatever. I don't know. You would know more than me, but it had some sort of natural ingredient, probably plant-based, right? Some natural thing. But it irritated me to the point that I threw it out and I could never buy it again. It gave me like a rash, and I was just like, this is so weird because it's only baking soda that does this. Like, what is happening? I'm like, armpits 10, deodorant 0.
Oh, sad.
My armpits just win and the deodorants lose.
Wow, interesting. And that's the thing too. It can be a journey because obviously every body and body chemistry is unique. So certain ingredients may be supportive to some and others can cause some kind of reaction. And so it can definitely be a bit of a investigation along the way for sure.
Yes. But just to wrap that up, like, I do have it under control. I have been literally using natural deodorants for a very, very long time. I've experimented with making my own, all the things. So in case anyone's concerned about the status of my armpits, we are good, but I don't want to make my own. Full disclosure. Yes. I don't, because it's worse when I put the baking soda with the stuff myself. It's just a lot more abrasive. So I actually am currently content with using other brands that have sorted this out better than I have.
Yeah, love it.
All right. Well, we can switch to another topic. One thing I wanted to, but thank you for entertaining me.
I'm so glad that resonated so deeply with you. I could talk deodorant all day.
I don't know if anyone else has the struggle, but man, because I'm committed to not, but I feel like there was only one time, I think, like literally in like recent past, that I really felt compelled to use a different deodorant, like once. It was several years ago, and I was on a trip, and I think I was speaking. And so,
stress sweat, like, nervous sweat's real.
So I think there was only one time that I think I was like, oh, I don't know. But anyways.
And that's the thing. I think we make all these changes to fortify our health, to create more resilient bodies. So then in the one-off, in however long we do apply where we're exposed or whatever, our bodies are going to be okay. And they'll be more quickly able to recover.
But I hate it because I'm used to sweating. No, seriously. When I used to, I'm sorry, I'm still talking about this. This will be maybe the last thing. So when I used to use Degree back in the day, I can still remember this from like high school. It would take days to wash it off. Like I would have to, because it really does whatever it does to stop you from sweating, right? So it was very effective and it had the smell. But I remember when I stopped using it, like I would have to like really rub that stuff to get it off because whatever they put in it. So kind of like fabric softener, like when you, I don't use fabric softener, but like when you use like we've got baby clothes from friends and stuff like that, you know, when you have little ones and they give you the package. And I remember a friend of ours, they were the nicest clothes too. They were like, right. But I had to wash them like 10 times.
Also just truly hanging them outside in the sunlight for like a day or two. Oh my gosh. Gets it out so well.
But I'm in Canada. It was probably winter.
Sad. That's true.
Sadly.
Valid.
Okay. So yes, thank you for the deodorant rabbit trail. I really appreciate it. And I trust that there's at least a few listeners who appreciated it too. So thanks a lot. I wanted to get to the menstrual cycle and using products in line with that. You had mentioned that when we had talked before. And I mean, one of the reasons that I haven't spoken specifically about the importance of clean skincare on the podcast for a while, which is one of the reasons why I'm thrilled that we're having this conversation. But in the past, when we would talk about this on the show, of course, one of the big reasons is just raising awareness about how important it is to pay attention to what we're putting on our skin. Because like I said, whatever you put on your skin, you may as well be eating. And pretty much all of the products that are engineered for women unless they actually do meet those clean standards, do have endocrine disrupting chemicals that do, many of them, the chemicals act like estrogens and then can throw off our cycle. Our hormones can even make our period pain worse and all the things. So tell us a little bit just about the role of skincare and how, for those of us who are aware of our cycles and charting our cycles, can kind of incorporate that into our routine.
Yeah, I love that. And so I feel like cycle syncing is just becoming more prominent and prevalent as we are learning more about our bodies. One thing you and I chatted about on the Grounded Wellness podcast, which I've heard you talk about before too, it's like, why weren't we taught this at a much younger age? I truly was in my mid 30s when I learned, which I'm only 38 now, but I was in my mid 30s when I learned that my cycle had 4 phases. I had no clue. And so now that I'm aware and I'm tuning in and learning more, it's so beautiful to see how when we sync up our lives, even our skincare, it can really help to support that delicate hormonal balance and all the ebbs and flow of those fluctuations, to not only just support like our energy and our mood, but also support all the changes that our skin can experience too. And when we use those clean products that don't have those endocrine disrupting chemicals, it can actually help truly, which sounds crazy, but it can bring balance back to that hormonal system over time. It can help to reduce period pain and the PMS symptoms and all the things when we have that lower toxic load in our bodies. But still, even with all that said, there's still the natural fluctuations of our hormones with our cycle, which you talk about obviously all the time. And so with those changes, it can impact how our skin is responding. And so cycle syncing our skincare is a really powerful way to just help keep it balanced and supported throughout our cycle. And so I can just walk us through the phases, kind of what's going on, and then a few really simple skincare tips that you can incorporate, which I love this too when we approach our cycle with this mindset, because then if breakouts appear right before your period, you're not like, oh, my like monthly pimples popping up. It's actually like, okay, I'm aware. I'm in my luteal phase. I'm moving towards my menstrual cycle. It's like these signs of your skin speaking to you of this is where you're at in your cycle, and then supporting it with really natural supportive ingredients. So with the menstrual phase, the focus here with skincare is moisture and massage. So I love acronyms, alliteration, I mean. So that's like an easy way to think menstrual. I need a little bit more moisture and an emphasis on massage, because in this phase is when our hormones are really dipped. Estrogen is low, progesterone is low. And so it helps. Because of these lower hormone levels, it actually contributes just to a little bit of a weaker skin barrier, lower sebum production, so your skin can be a little bit drier, a little bit more susceptible to irritation or inflammation. And so by focusing on moisture, which for a balanced moisture barrier, your skin needs both water and oil. I think oftentimes we can still be a little bit nervous to put oil onto our skin, thinking it's going to clog our pores or make us feel more oily, when in reality, balanced, healthy skin requires both skin-loving oils and that water content in the skin. So a couple of tips that I love for supporting the moisture barrier are plant hydrosols and like a facial mist after cleansing. And then while your skin is still damp and dewy, applying your facial oil or your facial cream. And a couple ingredients I really love for rebuilding moisture, which Primally Pure is also really known for, and it's a foundational ingredient, is tallow from grass-fed cows and emu oil. So these animal-based ingredients are very similar to the way that our skin is created, and it's similar to that makeup and that lipid barrier. And so it's actually easily recognized, easily absorbed, and all these fatty acids are foundational to healthy skin function. So plant hydrosols, animal-based moisture, and then massage to help boost the absorption of that moisture, and then to allow the skin to really support its internal functions. So facial dry brushing, facial gua sha, ridged facial rollers, any type of facial tool or just massage with your hands to really help support skin health and skin function from the inside out. So those are a few tips for the menstrual cycle. And then as we move into the follicular phase and ovulatory phase, as we feel our energy starts to increase a little bit, we're kind of coming out of that menstrual lull and slowness. This is where estrogen begins to increase a little bit. And that's when obviously we're preparing for ovulation and natural cell turnover is increasing, collagen is increasing, and hyaluronic acid production is increasing. So this is where your skin is starting to feel a little bit more glowy, a little bit more balanced, a little bit dewy. And progesterone production is still a little bit low here. So we're still wanting to focus on hydration and support that lipid barrier. So with the follicular and ovulatory phase, the focus is on light exfoliation just to help support that natural glow, nudging that cell renewal, and then fresh blood flow. So really enhancing the glow that your skin's already got. And again, massage is one of my favorite ways to enhance that microcirculation in the skin. Facial cupping is one of the best for that. You have an immediate glow. It's helping to really support that extra blood flow, that oxygen-rich nutrients to the skin. And then from an exfoliation perspective, this is something that I think is either often misunderstood or overused in skincare. So when I speak about exfoliation, I'm not thinking of aggressive scrubs or chemical peels. I'm thinking really gentle, skin-supportive exfoliation. So facial dry brushing is one of my favorite methods because it just gently buffs away any buildup or dead cells that are just ready to move along. It's not incurring any trauma or injury to the skin to incur that fresh collagen production or skin renewal prematurely, like a lot of other more aggressive exfoliation treatments can do. And it's simultaneously waking up that circulation and lymphatic flow below the surface. So it's like this 2-for-1 treatment. And then another really gentle exfoliant I love is just raw honey. So whether you use it as an all-over mask or as a cleanser, raw honey acts as a humectant. So it's very hydrating. It also has enzymatic exfoliating benefits. So it just helps to slowly kind of digest any buildup or dulls surface cells. And then when the honey mask is on, honey tapping is a fun way to activate more lymphatic drainage and blood flow. It's kind of like rebounding, but for your skin. So you just tap with the honey. It's quite elastic. And so it's creating this, it's just waking up all that lymphatic drainage and blood flow below the surface. So yes, facial cupping, raw honey, that light exfoliation, and hydration. And then as we move into the luteal phase, this is where our progesterone peaks and so does your oil production. So this is where you'll probably start to notice those more reoccurring breakouts right before your period. You may be more prone to inflammatory responses in the skin, more redness, irritation. And so the goal here is lymphatic drainage and detoxification, really helping to reduce that inflammation in the skin, keep the skin really clear, and supporting that optimal flow of the lymph fluid. And so, as I mentioned, facial tools are one of my favorite and easiest ways to really support the lymphatic drainage in the skin. And gua sha, I love. If you're experiencing more breakouts on the face, just by focusing on the neck flow with any of your facial tools, creates these open pathways of drainage and detoxification to actually lower breakouts and inflammation on the face. Another skincare tip in the luteal phase is double cleansing. And so this is a 2-step cleansing technique. One starts with the cleansing oil, and step 2 is more of a water or glycerin-based cleanser. So it's a really thorough, complete cleanse, helping to really detoxify, but not overstrip or dry out the skin, which is really important to preserve that natural lipid barrier. And then as well, the animal-based ingredients. So looking for those creams and balms to help keep the microbiome balanced, the skin barrier balanced, because even with acne or breakouts, oftentimes the traditional protocol can be to dry it out and to be really aggressive with these acne-fighting ingredients, when something really nourishing and gentle like an animal-based fat that's ethically sourced, packed with fatty acids, are very, very healing and can actually help prevent any post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation or acne scarring after a breakout. And then the other thing with breakouts, oftentimes salicylic acid is a go-to acne ingredient. However, that's also shown to be an endocrine disruptor. And so looking for natural alternatives to salicylic acid, like white willow bark, manuka oil, Tea tree oil is very antibacterial and effective. So just nourishing your skin barrier instead of going after it with more aggressive treatments. So yeah, I think that's essentially like looking at it as a whole. And again, it's not like a one guide for every skin state, but it's really an encouragement to just tune into your skin. Like, okay, what's happening here? What are my hormones doing? How is it impacting my skin? And then what are these like little tweaks we can make to our routine to help support our nervous system, our skin state, and our hormones within?
Oh, I love that. I love that you took us through the different stages of the cycle. And when you frame it that way, even for, I mean, of course, I think of the cycle for pretty much everything because that's what I've been doing. But for women who are struggling with different issues with their skin, even just tracking where those issues are cropping up in your cycle can be huge, obviously.
Yeah.
And then pairing that with some intentional practices around kind of minimizing what tends to happen more in those stages, of course, you're going to get much better results. And I love that you talked a little bit about the role of animal products in skincare as well. I think more and more people are kind of starting to realize that it makes sense. Like, I'm trying to think of the phrase, but like supports like, I think is the phrase I'm thinking.
That's also why oil cleansing can be so effective for skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so different to, again, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, it's very different to what we were taught about at that time. I mean, if you call that education. But when the whole industry seemed to be based on chemicals and potentially plant-based products, which have a role. But I think we're shifting more to what actually works for humans. And so it's really just refreshing, I suppose you could say, to hear more candid discussion about what's actually working.
I love that. And I think it's beautiful when we look at these formulations that include both plant-based and animal-based ingredients. That is nature. That's where nature thrives, with the presence of both. Like when we look at just monocropping and when it's just one crop planted, it actually is quite destructive to soil biodiversity and our planet as a whole. And so regenerative farming, which we also educate a lot about, actually incorporates pasture-raised animals that graze, and their manure acts as compost for the soil and restoring that soil health. And so I just like to compare our products with like the way nature was intended to function, with the presence of both.
Well, so as we start wrapping up today, I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about Primally Pure and some of the products you mentioned, the deodorant, and where our listeners can go to find more information also about yourself, and where they can go to find more about you on the socials, all the things, and if there's anything interesting and exciting on the horizon.
Yes. So I think a couple of our best-selling products that I always recommend checking out first is for sure the deodorant, which we spent quite a bit of time chatting about today. We have 7 or 8 different aroma profiles for our deodorant. So that's something fun. You could order like the trio and try out different scents for your body, see how they work. We also have a deodorant quiz that's kind of based on your personality, which can be fun to figure out which scent is best for you. Another product I really love to recommend is our plumping line in our facial care products. Our plumping line is infused with bakuchiol, which is a plant-based alternative to retinol. And studies have actually shown that this ingredient, bakuchiol, performs just like a retinol. So it helps to smooth lines, resurface skin, support acne. However, there's no side effects like a retinol can incur, which creates more sensitivities, more redness, sensitive to sun exposure. So that's an ingredient I love to educate people about, especially with maybe the luteal phase breakouts or postpartum hormonal acne. Bakuchiol is a really powerful ingredient to support skin health. And it's also pregnancy safe and really beneficial. And then we just launched our brand new SPF collection. So this is huge. While I don't recommend wearing sunscreen every single day because of the benefits of light for our overall health. But of course, if you're going to spend a day at the beach or you're on vacation or an afternoon extended hike, you want to look for a mineral-based sun protection that's broad spectrum. And so we have our non-nano zinc oxide sunscreen, and it's infused with tallow. So that animal-based nourishment not only provides a sun barrier, but also protects your skin barrier. So that's an exciting new launch that we have. And I think too, with all the education surfacing now about chemical actives in sunscreen and how detrimental they are to our DNA, to our health, to our hormone systems, there have been recalls and FDA changing their mind about the only truly safe sun protection, which are mineral based. It's really important to relook at the SPF you're applying to your skin, especially with I think that's something we've all been raised with too, is do not leave the house without sunscreen. And so kind of re-evaluating which sunscreens you're actually applying.
Mm-hmm.
So Primally Pure, you can shop all of our products at primallypure.com. We're a completely e-commerce brand, so everything lives on our website. We also have an incredible customer experience team that loves to educate and provide guidance and resources. So if you're new to the brand or new to natural skincare, just send our team an email. We also have a skincare quiz. So if you're wanting to shift your facial skincare routine, that can help provide some guidance in what products to put together for your morning and evening routine. And then on Instagram, we're at Primally Pure, where we have a ton of education. I share some different tutorials for facial massage techniques and skincare routines. And then, of course, our podcast, Grounded Wellness, is on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you tune into podcasts. And then our blog is purelifeblog.com. So tons of just very well-researched information there as a guide and a go-to resource for really living a more clean, non-toxic lifestyle.
Amazing. Well, we will make sure to link all of those to the show notes page in case anyone is on the go. And Courtney, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. This was such a treat. We covered so much ground, and I feel a lot more informed actually about skincare.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, Lisa. I think skincare there's so much synergy here with all that you educate your community on and the power of natural, non-toxic skincare. So grateful we could connect and share this conversation with your community.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and you're wanting to share it with a friend, or you're wanting to grab any of the links that we talked about, head over to fertilityfriday.com/587. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode with Courtney. It was such a treat to have her on the show. And like I said, a great follow-up to the episode we had last week about toxins, and having that specific focus on skincare, thinking about how your skin is a reflection of your overall health and the connection to the menstrual cycle, I think are all really important themes that we talked about today, as well as kind of buyer beware, being aware of this new trend now for companies to say the right things in their marketing, but not necessarily follow through by removing the toxic chemicals in the products themselves. So I do think that this conversation was kind of well-rounded in that it helps us to remember that it's not the skincare piece, and extremely important. But if you're looking to have lasting, healthy skin, it's more than simply what we put on our skin. We want to be taking that kind of whole body approach to understanding those connections, which I think is really important. But also we want to be taking a closer look at the products that we're putting on our skin and being aware of the trends for different marketing strategies around green products. And so this whole idea of greenwashing is something that we should really be aware of as well. Knowing that companies, maybe they just stick in aloe at the end of their toxic product soup. And now they say, oh, made with aloe. It's like really just as an example, or all natural or whatever, but then they still use the parabens and the fragrance and things like that. And words like natural aren't necessarily policed. So there's a lot of creative marketing efforts as consumers that we should be aware of, so that we are really aware of what we're putting into our bodies. And I know I mentioned on the episode that there's been a number of times when I bring home a product, maybe I was busy, maybe, I had a child at my feet or something and I wasn't paying as much attention. And I bring home what I thought to be a natural product from the health food store. And as soon as I open it, I can tell that it's just loaded with fragrance. So this is very, very common. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, why did they even put these products in the health food store? Shouldn't they? But it's a reminder that just because it's late, like you could have the prettiest, greenest looking label, you can have it in the most high-end store and it's still full of chemicals, right? So we have to always just be aware of what we're buying, what we're putting on our skin. And although it's inconvenient for us to have to take the action and into our own hands, like be responsible for this, it's just how it is. This industry is far from being regulated in a way that we don't have to be aware of the products. All right. So with that said, I hope that you have a wonderful weekend whenever you're tuning into the show. If you found this episode resonated with you, if you can think of someone who would benefit from hearing it, feel free to share it. The link is fertilityfriday.com/587. So thank you for spending some time with me today. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting. If you're loving the podcast and you're ready to apply fertility awareness strategies in your women's health practice, then I know you'll love our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship. It's a 9-month immersive experience that will completely transform the way you work with clients, allowing you to not only teach fertility awareness, but to use the menstrual cycle as a vital sign and diagnostic tool in your women's health practice. Our next class starts in January 2026, so there's still time to reserve your spot. There's no other program like this offered anywhere. Transform your practice in 9 months. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/famlive to apply now. That's fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLIVE.